Californians invade Texas. Could this be the greatest threat to our Republican form of government? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Well, men, a story, oddly enough, in the British Guardian points out that more Californians come to Texas than Texans who go to California. And in fact, among the two states, they are both the biggest recipients of each other's immigrants, exigrants, or whatever you call them. But the flow from Texas to California is about, well, let's do it the other way. The flow from California to Texas, for every 5 Californians moving to Texas, 3 Texans move to California. So the net flow is in favor of Texas. And the story points out in The Guardian that here in Collin County, Texas, my own home county here, every one of our 38 countywide elected officials are Republicans. In the state of Texas, every statewide office, elected office, is held by, guess what? A Republican. The state legislature is firmly, by a margin of about 2-1 in both houses, in control of Republicans. However, it wasn't always that way. As another little bit of research I was doing pointed out, it wasn't until 1978 that Texas elected its first Republican governor since the Reconstruction. We're talking 1874, I believe it was, or maybe it was 1867, going way back. There haven't been a whole lot of Republican governors in Texas. In fact, Texas voted for Jimmy Carter over Gerald Ford, shocking though that may be. So, things have changed in Texas, and now this migration has a lot of local conservatives concerned that these folks from this blue state want to turn Texas purple or even blue. Stephen Green, what gives Republicans in Texas the right to demand that Democrats go along with our current way of life when, not too long ago, the state belonged to them?
Well, you can't demand it. This is a democratic republic. We argue these things and have a public debate. But as someone who's lived the last almost 25 years in Colorado, let me tell you, oh boy, are you guys in trouble. Colorado, we've got a sort of a old-fashioned Goldwater libertarian streak, much more conservative than Republican. We don't tend to like outsiders very much, messing with that. When Texas was getting all that oil money in the 70s, I saw a bumper sticker here when I was visiting Colorado as a kid that said, if God had meant for Texans to ski, he'd have given them mountains. Because all the Texas oil money was buying up ski country here in Colorado. And then when I moved here back in 94, I used to tell people that I'd moved here from Oregon instead of from California. And the reason I told them I moved here from Oregon is I said, I had to get out of Oregon. There were too many Californians coming. And people would go, oh, Open Steve. Arms. Oh, Steve. Yeah. And so we've been getting an influx of Californians here for a long time, and it's taken a reliably sort of libertarian conservative state and turned it deep purple. And in presidential elections, it's pretty dang blue now. And Scott, here's the danger. You give the Democrats just a little bit of control, and they will in 2 years. This is all they had here, controlling the House, Senate, and the governorship in just 2 years. Man, they chased a Magpul out of here, the magazine manufacturer and gun accessory manufacturer. Chased the jobs. They didn't care that it was jobs. They didn't care that nothing would change. They just did it out of spite. They installed same-day voter registration, vote by mail now. We can't even go to a polling place and vote. They did all this stuff in 2 years, and that's all it took to take our red state and turn it bluish purple. So, Scott, watch out, buddy.
I read a book about that campaign that was organized to get candidates to run everywhere in Colorado, and it was ingenious. And frankly, they tried to find candidates who had sort of that red, white, and blue American reputation, but just happened to be, blue in their heart of hearts. And so, yeah, you're right. It can happen anywhere.
Yeah, they ran like conservatives, but they voted like liberal Democrats.
That's right. Well, Bill, I mean, you've pointed out before. I mean, why would Californians want to move to Texas to get away from California, come to a place that's different than where they came from, and then vote to turn it back into the place that they fled? However, as Steve pointed out, you can't stop them from being who they are. You can't beat it out of them. So, what would you, if you were advising Texas Republicans?
You could try.
Bill and his tire iron of justice.
That's right. If you were advising Texas Republicans and how they should greet, for example, the 4,000 or 5,000 new people coming with the Toyota headquarters that moved from California to Texas, to Plano, Texas, after 52 years of being in California, how would you recommend that we embrace those new Californians immigrating to Texas?
Well, I tried to explain how to do that several years ago, and at a Ted Cruz event, and I got into some actual trouble over that. So I'm gonna
Did the Secret Service come to visit you?
No, but he came
like
to visit me because everybody knew we were joking. I said, if you see California tags, just open fire, and ask questions later. And you know what? You know why I got a big laugh in that Dallas church of 4,000 people, and they all roared. They roared because it's true. They all laughed because they know what you're saying. I recall seeing or hearing about anyway. This is 30 years ago. Speaking of bumper stickers, Steve, there was one in Oregon that said, "Don't Californicate Oregon."
That's the other
one. And if you go to a place like Idaho, you've got to it's like decompression. You can't go directly from California because they'll simply despise you. You've got to move from California, maybe do a year in Nevada, a year in Utah, and then you can just kind of get yourself back to America that way. They do it because they're stupid, and I mean that they're very intelligent, but they're very stupid.
So how do we change their minds about that?
Well, I have a theory about that, and my theory is that the nicer the climate, the stupider you can be. I really do believe this. I'm not joking either. I think that the dumbest people I've ever seen was at an art show in Santa Barbara, which is also the most beautiful climate and the nicest place I've ever been.
It's because you don't have to be hardy and resourceful?
Yeah,
it's because you don't have to be. Yeah, it's because you don't have to be hardy and resourceful. Exactly. By the way, the business about Texas changing used to be Democrat. I don't think Texas changed at all much, really. I think it's the background that changed. You know those optical illusions where they have like two squares and one square is against like a white background and one square is against a black background, and they say the gray square is exactly the same color, but they look radically different because of the contrast? I suspect that's what's going on. I suspect the rest of the country just got so incredibly more liberal since then that Texas pretty much remained the same and is Texas was a Democrat in the same way John Kennedy was, bear any burden, ask not what your country can give to you electronically, monthly, but rather ask what you can do for your country, and so on and so forth. Anyway, it's California arrogance, right? It's what draws people to California in the first place, is this sense that nothing is really real here, and that's okay. I'll just close by saying this. Typical of the California attitude is, I got into a brief debate with a woman who was a Democratic local council person in Irvine, California. And she was saying, well, because we got in the middle of this, she said, if Republicans are really so great, how come California's doing so well? California is the seventh biggest economy in the world, and it's run by Democrats. And I said, it is the seventh biggest economy in the world. And before the Democrats got a hold of it, it was the fifth biggest economy in the world. and it takes a while to bleed out that much prosperity, but they're doing it. Everybody's leaving. Boeing left Washington for the same kind of reasons. We are the poorest state in the nation. By any reasonable accounting of assets and liabilities, California is the poorest state in the union. Debt is unbelievable. And nobody wants to look at the red ink on the spreadsheet. All they do is look at the black ink. And so more and more red ink builds up, and sooner or later, they're going to pay. We're going to pay.
Yeah, and Bill, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, how many companies like Apple or Google getting fed up and leaving before California isn't just on the downslope, but is just actually broke?
But the problem is, as Scott's entire point is not that they're leaving, it's that they're taking their politics with them. They are taking with them the seeds of everything that they're running away from. They're going to places like Texas, and they're calling for higher taxes and more regulations. Frankly, I think there is a practical solution, Scotty, and I think they ought to take the materials and funds allocated for the border wall with Mexico and instead just erect it along the border with New Mexico, and just basically put checkpoints there. Because of all the things in the country that I genuinely worry about, this pinkening of Texas and Idaho and Colorado is desperately serious business.
Well, and we moved here 3 years ago from Pennsylvania, and I could not be happier than to be a Texan. And having no personal income tax is an awesome thing. When you look around, in contrast to where I came from, there are construction cranes and sites everywhere. The prosperity is thick in the atmosphere. You can smell it, and it is just an exciting place to be. And pretty much anything that I could ever want to see is within 20 minutes of a drive from here. So if you come here from California, you may not have come voluntarily. You may have come because your employer up and moved. And so you've been sort of dragged along against your will. But I would ask you, just give it a second, okay? Just look around and contrast and compare the cost of real estate, for example, the burden of taxation, the obvious prosperity all around you, and the abundance attitude that you see everywhere. And try not to get caught up in the media ginned up debates over social issues that really don't make a difference of a hill of beans, And I would advise Republicans in the Texas state legislature, which, by the way, meets only once every 2 years and only for 140 days.
It's a miracle.
Which is a beautiful thing. And their only real responsibility is to pass a budget. Unfortunately, during this last session, they proposed 6,600 laws and passed 1,200 of them. So even here, government is out of control. And by the way, one of the bluest places in the state is Austin, where the state capital is. But I would say to Republicans, restrain your desire to dictate other people's lifestyles. I'm with you on what you think is an appropriate lifestyle, but don't use the long arm of the law to try to impose your theological rule over other people. Reach out with the love and grace of Jesus Christ to these folks and let him do that kind of work. Stop doing it through the legislature, because the people coming in from out of state will be so distracted by that they'll never see the economic blessings of liberty here in Texas. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching Right Angle. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making it possible.
And if the Jesus message causes the California skins to burst into flames, then treat the whole state as like a level 5 biohazard area and get out the hazmat suits.
Oh, my goodness.